Welcome back to the Sportsmemo College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our next guest, Kyle Hunter. We're going from rotation number 155 down to 184. That's starting with UAB UTEP down to South Florida, Houston here with Kyle. Kyle, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Doing all right, man. Looking forward to talking some more college football. I can't believe it's week 9 already.
Man, it's going fast, and we're getting into college basketball now. We got NBA started up, obviously NFL. It's a crazy time of year for sports bettors. We were just talking about it off air. How you doing? You holding up, man?
Yeah, man. I've been 5-1 last 6, and I'll tell you what, it's a busy time of the year to be a handicapper, though. If you put as much time into researching these games and trying to break everything down as I do, it's one of those times of the year that you have to let the family know that I'm not going to be part of any of the plans and the special things going on. I'm going to be at the office.
Yeah, for sure. It's put the women and the children to sleep and get to work at handicapping here. We got a college football handicap, 155, 156, UAB at UTEP. Looks like the Blazers laying 15.5 or 16 on the road, 50 the total. I'll tell you, Kyle, both teams have been pretty good. Even UTEP, we just talked about it. They're not the worst team in Division I football anymore. They've been covering some spreads. So how would you look to bet the Blazers and Miners here?
Yeah, so on this one, first of all, UAB has been a good team. Bill Clark, I think he's a really good coach. He waited around for this team while there's no football program at UAB for a couple of years. I have to say, this is a team that I like to cheer for. It's a UAB team that has made bettors a lot of money here the last couple of years. Having said that, when I look at this game, I think this is a tough scheduling spot for them. They're coming off the North Texas win. It's a really big win for them. North Texas, one of the other favorites in the conference. You take UTEP, they haven't won a game yet this year, but they've outgained their opponent in 3 of their last 4 games. I think it's pretty obvious that UTEP is improving quite a bit. It seems like the coaching change has helped them compared to last season. So to me, I think UTEP plus the points here would be my lean. Before the season, I remember looking at UTEP's season win total and wondering if they were going to win a game. UTEP probably is going to knock somebody off the rest of the season if they keep playing as well as they have been. They're clearly improving. It would be UTEP or nothing on the side. I think that this is one of those sleepy spots for UAB to where if UTEP plays this game very tight, it wouldn't surprise me at all. 2 teams who run the ball a lot, play very slowly. My leans here would be UTEP and possibly the under as well. You get 2 teams running the ball as much as they do. It's hard to like the over.
And I'll tell you, Kyle, we send out an email and just kind of have each handicapper prepare for the games they're going to talk about. And Teddy's was supposed to end at Colorado at 154, but he asked me before we started the show to do UAB UTEP. He felt really strong about it, so we just covered it twice. So listeners, you're not if it wasn't a mishap, Teddy wanted to go over that one. So this podcast is to hear everything on the board, and I doubt there's any other podcast out there that's going to give you 2 takes on UAB UTEP this weekend. But you got it here with the Sportsmemo Every Game on the Board podcast. We'll move down here, 157, 158. Northern Illinois at BYU, 42 the total, with BYU laying 7 at home here, Kyle.
Yeah, this is a game that I've looked at quite a bit. Northern Illinois, a team that's 129th in the country in yards per play. They haven't had anything on offense all year. BYU, not very good on offense either, but they have a new quarterback. Since they brought in their young quarterback, I think they've been a good amount better. This is a BYU team that overall is a very veteran team, a Northern Illinois team that's very young. Situationally, why does this game matter much to Northern Illinois? You're going to a spot a long ways away in the middle of the MAC schedule. If you're a situational handicapper, you have to like BYU in this spot. BYU not an easy place to play either, with some elevation there. So to me, I could only play BYU here. The total, this is one that I've been asked off the air by some other people about this game. The total, I think, it makes sense to play an under in a game like this, but I have to tell you, taking a total under 42 and a half, it's hard to do. You get a defensive score, you get anything go the wrong way, a couple big penalties. you're beat. Going under a total that low is something that I don't like to make a habit out of doing. So even though the under looks like an easy play here, I couldn't pull the trigger on that, and my lean would be BYU here.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. I agree with you with the lean on BYU. But there is a couple things that scare me, though, Kyle. I'd like to get your opinion as far as you bring up the change at quarterback, which is something that keeps me off of betting the under, just because I think there's going to be a lot of volatility in what to expect with the BYU offense. However, Northern Illinois defense, it's been good this year, and they were able to step up in class. Granted, it was home against Utah, and Utah wasn't really hitting on all cylinders, but still the ability to kind of step up and hold Tyler Huntley and company in check, I believe under 3 touchdowns, is something that is a little worrisome. Do you think that kind of defensively Northern Illinois can hang here with the Cougars?
Yeah, look, Northern Illinois' defense is good. They're especially good against the run, only 2.72 yards per carry allowed. This Northern Illinois defensive front certainly very good. The secondary somewhat questionable. So if BYU can throw the ball here, they should be able to have some success. I trust Northern Illinois' defense. I think they'll do a solid job. I just don't know that Northern Illinois can do much of anything on offense here.
Kyle, we got a late night one on the West Coast, 159-160, San Diego State at Nevada. Looking at this from a glimpse view, you see SDSU just laying 2.5 and kind of go, what's up here against Nevada? However, Nevada with Ganji at the quarterback position has been pretty good offensively, and we're seeing 46 the total here. How would you look to bet the Aztecs and Wolfpack?
First of all, I would say that, as I was breaking this game down, this is a really rare matchup of two teams who both use the 3-3-5 defensive scheme. I think that's why we've seen under money come in here, because this is usually one of those schemes that you almost never see. So you get the benefit of, you never get to see this defense. You don't know what to do. I think that they think that these defensive schemes going against each other, that they would be able to match up well. Having said that, part of the reason that the total has gone down also has to be the fact that San Diego State has just played so many really low-scoring games. San Diego State, a very slow-tempo team. Look at their tempo. They're 115th out of 130 in the country in tempo. They're going to run the ball consistently. They've ran the ball on almost 69% of their plays on offense so far this year. You've got a clashing style when it comes to passing attack of the air raid of Nevada versus the running game of San Diego State. You got both teams playing the 3-3-5. I think this is a complex handicap. These two teams, it's really interesting, are 46th, San Diego State 46th, and Nevada 47th in yards per play margin on the season. So I see a lot of reason to think that this would be a close game, and I'm going to pass on this one.
Kyle, let's head out to the Pac-12. We got Washington State at Stanford. Looks like 53.5 the total, with the Cardinal laying 3 at home.
Yeah, this is the spot where in a normal game with no situational question marks here, I would have taken Washington State. But Washington State put everything into last weekend's game day in town. I had Washington State last weekend as my one ATS play. That one ended up working out. They got their win over Oregon. Stanford has a couple extra days to prepare for this game as well. Like I said, I think in a normal spot I would be on Washington State, because I don't think Stanford's defense is very good this year. I think Stanford is a team that's down some. The Pac-12 in general, not a very good conference this year. Quite a few injuries for Stanford as well. I couldn't back Stanford with a run game in the bottom 5 in the country so far this year in yards per carry. Stanford probably will be able to throw the ball some here, though. They have some good wide receivers, a better passing game than they've normally had. I think Washington State will move the ball quite a bit here as well. My lean in this game would be to the over. I couldn't play a side here. This total has been bet down a little bit. I have to say, it's scary to take overs with Stanford because they move so slowly, but Washington State will keep the tempo going as much as they can, and I think that both offenses could get some chunk yardage on some of their plays.
Yeah, and something to also think about, if Washington State's able to jump out to a lead, it will speed Stanford up, but I agree. It's just a lot of question marks in this. Bryce Love's health. Also, it's a tough spot for Washington State, off that big win like you mentioned, Kyle. So, yeah, it's a rough one there in the Pac-12. Also staying in the Pac-12, we got Arizona State at USC. This one in Los Angeles, 54.5 the total, with the Trojans laying 6 at home. Is this a spot, in your opinion, to kind of jump on Herm Edwards and company here off of that hard-fought loss against Stanford last week?
Yeah, I watched a lot of that game. I think Arizona State had a real chance to win that game. Some key turnovers, really bad clock management at the end of that game as well. Arizona State has been a lot better than most people would have expected. They're 32nd in the nation in yards per play margin. USC is 66th. So USC has been a big disappointment in my mind. Clay Helton, not a coach I like to back at all. He's 19-0 at home. On the road, a different story. I think Clay Helton does not get enough out of his talent. We know USC has a lot of talent. A big question mark here is, will JT Daniels play? I've seen differing reports on this, so definitely something to keep an eye on as far as JT Daniels in concussion protocol. Some listing him as probable. Some have even said doubtful. Definitely something you want to know here, because if he doesn't play, we're going to get Sears starting at quarterback. A big unknown there. I think Daniels has played pretty well of late. So if you want to back USC, you want to make sure he's playing. My slight lean here would be Arizona State. I think that, so far we've got an Arizona State team that has certainly outperformed expectations, a USC team that has underperformed. And USC doesn't have as much to play for as you would expect based on their big loss to Utah last week. And I will say also, that loss to Utah was a little misleading. They should have lost by more than they did. They were outgained by, I think, about 300 yards in that game. So a couple key turnovers from Utah gave USC a couple easy touchdowns. And other than that, Utah really dominated them. So I don't trust this USC team. It would be Arizona State or nothing here for me.
Staying in the Pac-12, we got Washington at Cal. Looks like the Huskies laying 11.5 on the road, 45 the total, Kyle.
Yeah, this is an interesting game because you've got a Washington team that's out of the playoff race, but they still have stuff to play for as far as in the Pac-12. And Chris Peterson's a good coach. So far in this game, I think it's interesting to see that the bets are 79% of the bets so far on Washington. The money's almost exactly 50-50, so we certainly have some sharp action on Cal to keep this number where it is. I think that makes sense based on the fact that Cal's defense has been very solid throughout the course of the season. The question mark, though, to me, can Cal get a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over? Cal has had some major turnover issues so far this year. I know they've been switching quarterbacks around. This is a spot where it's hard for me to take a side here. I would definitely lean to the under in this game. 45, a key number. So you want to be able to get 45 if you take the under here. Jake Browning, also not a quarterback I can trust either. I think we've all seen by this point, Jake Browning with his, inability to throw the ball away. He'll throw the ball kind of up for grabs right as he's getting sacked instead of just throwing it away. It's something they've talked with him a lot about, but it really hasn't changed anything so far. So to me, the lean here in this game is the under.
Kyle, let's head to Jacksonville here. We got Georgia, Florida, and the largest outdoor cocktail party with the Bulldogs laying 6.5, 52 the total. I guess it could be the SEC East Championship on the line. I know what Georgia still has to go to Lexington, but nonetheless, it's a big one in the SEC standings here with 6.5. The Bulldogs laying 52 the total, Kyle.
Yeah, I think that this is a must-see TV type of game. I think it's one that everybody would want to watch. I think it could be a little bit of a difficult one to bet. My lean would be the under. I think that both teams would be very motivated in this game. Why wouldn't they be? The question mark is which run defense can step up a little bit, because Florida's run defense, 68th in the nation in yards per carry allowed. Georgia's run defense, 70th. Both teams are going to run a lot here, so we're going to see who can stand up against the run and do a solid job. Georgia is -3 in sack margin so far this year, while Florida is +12. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Georgia's offensive line has struggled a little bit. Florida will definitely bring the heat in this game. Like I said, if I was taking anything here, I'd take the under. But I do think that maybe the best way to look at this game is to watch this game and see if you can find out something about either of these teams or both of these teams that maybe you find some value on them in future weeks.
Guys, we got a coupon code here for Kyle. It's CFB30. So if you type that in at checkout, you can get 30% off anything to do with Kyle's college football. That could be a 3-day all-access. It could be full season for 30% off. Also, we'll add in the all-access or full season college football, week college football, whatever. That's CFB30 at checkout. Kyle's heating up of late, 5-1 his last 6 releases. And Kyle, we'll move on down the card here. We got 169, 170 out west. UNLV at San Jose State. Looks like the Spartans laying 3 at home, 59 the total.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at this game. The first is to say San Jose State's favored. I mean, the first thing I saw when I see them the favorite, I can't believe San Jose State's favored, but yet I don't want to take UNLV. So I mean, this is one of those spots where you think it looks crazy, but at the same time, it's probably right. And I think this is a spot where both teams have been terrible at protecting their quarterback. You look at sack margin, UNLV minus 14 in sack margin, San Jose State minus 20. Those are both bottom 10 in the country. Both of these teams are going to play fast. My lean would be the over here. I think that both teams can get some big plays in the running game. This total not too terribly high for two teams that are playing quickly. As far as the side, it's hard for me to recommend laying points with San Jose State at minus 3. This is the first time they've been favored in a really long time. I don't know right offhand, but San Jose State has been a very weak team. They're certainly better than they were. And UNLV, their team's not nearly as good without Armani Rogers. The rushing game's not what it was with him. UNLV's defense very weak. No lean on the side, but I would take the over if I took anything in this game.
Kyle, we got Tulane versus Tulsa. Looks like 50.5 the total, with the Tulsa Hurricanes laying 1.5 at home.
So if you look at last year's matchup between these two teams, Tulane racked up a ridiculous 488 rushing yards on Tulsa. I had to look at that one twice when I was looking at my stats, because 488 rushing yards is pretty tremendous. It's pretty rare to see. And I think that's hard to overlook. Tulsa's defense has been better so far this year, but they're good against the pass, not good against the run. We know Tulane's going to run here, so can Tulsa stop it? I don't have any confidence that they would be able to stop it here. Both teams rank in the top 15 in the nation in highest percentage of plays as rushing plays so far this year. Tulane has had a good run defense. Tulsa has had a bad run defense. I would take Tulane here in this spot. Maybe instead of taking the plus 1.5, you take the money line. A lot of times if it's plus 2.5, plus 2, something like that, if I can't get a 3, I look to take the money line. I think that more often than not, it's a plus EV move to take the money line there in that spot.
Kyle, we got a good one here in the SEC West. This one kind of sleeper under the radar. 173, 174, Texas A&M at Mississippi State. Looks like the Bulldogs laying 1.5 in Starkville, 43.5 the total.
So I'm of the opinion that Texas A&M is undervalued in the marketplace. I think the Aggies are clearly a better coach team than when Kevin Sumlin was here. Fisher's a good coach. He's been doing a good job with this team. Mississippi State, they have to be able to run. Fitzgerald just cannot throw. He's been slumping really badly here of late. I know some Mississippi State fans are even calling for Thompson, the backup. But Fitzgerald's had a good career at Mississippi State, but passing it lately, he's just had all kinds of turnovers. This is a Texas A&M team that I think can either run or throw it. Texas A&M defense is weak against the pass, but can Mississippi State take advantage of that? I don't think they can. Texas A&M ranks 16th in yards per carry allowed this year, a very good run defense. Both teams rank in the bottom 25 in pace of play. I certainly would lean to the under, but again, this is a really low number. Don't like taking unders below 45 or so, honestly. I like Texas A&M here. I will say the one thing that gives me some pause, 85% of the bets are on the Aggies. So everybody and their brother and mom and dad is taking this short underdog. And, that's a spot that I don't, if I like it enough, I'll go ahead and take it. But it certainly at least gives me some pause. What about you, Drew?
I mean, so what, Kyle, you're going off of tickets written or money bet when you say
tickets?
Okay, because yeah. I mean, personally, I always like to tell people this, from living down in Costa Rica, dealing with sports books a little bit closer than most. I don't put a lot of emphasis in percent of money. I always like to say that just because sports books don't want to tell a lot of people that. So as far as tickets written, I do a little bit. A lot of times, though, I try to get that out of my mind. But yeah, I take a glance at it. But as far as this, I mean, it makes sense. Texas A&M, it's the sexier, right, more well-known side here. So yeah, Mississippi State isn't having fireworks on offense by any means. So you can see that being the public side. I still like it. I haven't bet it though. I doubt I will. So yeah, that's pretty much what I guess in response to you asking me my opinion on that. But staying in the SEC here, we got Kentucky at Missouri. This one an interesting one. Missouri 7.5 at home. This number jumped off at me, Kyle, just like looking at this from afar. I mean, Kentucky's what, a top 20-ish team, top 15 team, and catching 7 from Missouri, who's mediocre. I mean, I wouldn't put Missouri in the top half of the SEC by any means. 56.5 the total. How do you view this one?
Yeah, so before this week, I like to go in and circle some games that I want to take, and I wanted to take Missouri in this spot. I think Kentucky is overvalued here. Having said that, I didn't expect to be laying 7 or 7.5, and I can't take Missouri at this price. I thought I might get a Missouri minus 4.5, Missouri minus 4. Instead, you've got 7.5. Kentucky, to me, has a big problem in their passing game. At some point, not having a passing game is going to catch up to them. Kentucky runs the ball consistently. If they're playing from behind, they're going to be in trouble. I think Missouri's explosive enough on offense that they could bust some big plays here in the passing game. Kentucky's defense certainly very solid. Drew Lock, a good quarterback for Missouri. I think Missouri has a decent home field advantage. You have a Kentucky team that, to me, most people are too high on now, in my opinion. I think that we're going to find out that Kentucky's not quite as good as their ranking. Kentucky only 10 plays of 30 yards or more so far this year, so not an explosive offense. They have to do it little by little. I think Missouri is the more explosive offense here. Obviously, Kentucky has the better defense, and like I said, they priced me out of this one. I can't take minus 7.5. Seems like the marketplace isn't nearly as high on Kentucky as what the AP voters are.
Yeah, the numbers just seems a little fishy to me. Missouri, that might make Missouri the side, but you said, like you said, Kyle, it's a little pricey. Staying in the SEC East, yeah, we got Tennessee, South Carolina, 54.5 the total. Looks like the Gamecocks laying 7.5 or 8 in Columbia.
So if you look at this game, this is a Tennessee team that has played better of late, certainly. South Carolina is the better team here. South Carolina, 55% of the bets on South Carolina, 78% of the money on South Carolina so far. This is one of my least favorite games that we're talking about, so I'll just say that, I'd pass on this game. I really have nothing too interesting about either of these teams. To me, Tennessee's played better of late, but can they prove it on a consistent basis? South Carolina, not a team that I really like to lay points with. I'd rather take points with them. So I'm going to pass on this one.
Do you like Jeremy Pruitt as a head coach, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. We're going to find out if he's a good enough recruiter, and I think that's going to be the most important part. I think he's a good X's and O's guy. He's proven himself on the defensive end, certainly in the past, and Tennessee is usually a pretty easy place to recruit to, so I assume he'll do pretty well here.
And who would you give the head coaching advantage to here, Tennessee, South Carolina?
I'd call this one a wash. I'm not a huge fan of Muschamp, but at the same time, he's been in that system for a while, so I don't give any coaching advantage to anybody in this one.
All right, not a big fan of Coach Boom, huh?
No, not a huge fan.
All right. We got Texas, Oklahoma State. Not sure what's happened to the Cowboys here in Stillwater, but either way, they're catching 3.5, 59.5 the total, Kyle.
Yeah, so this one, I think we talked about Texas, was it last week maybe? I still am not convinced that Texas is as good as their ranking. They still have to prove it to me. They've been really good as an underdog. Everybody knows the stats about Tom Herman as an underdog. Mediocre as a favorite. Mike Gundy's a good coach. Look, whether you like his mullet and his I'm a man comments and stuff like that. I'm a 40-year-old, that type of thing. At Oklahoma State, he's coached them very well. They're 10-4 ATS off and against the spread loss, 4-1 ATS off a bye week. They had a bye week to get ready here. I think Texas is overvalued in the top 25 polls right now. The public is taking Texas here, and that doesn't really surprise me. I think that Texas is the team with a big name, and they've played pretty well. 58% of the bets so far on Texas, a little bit more of the money coming in lately here on Oklahoma State. I think it's going to be curious. I'm curious to see where this line will close. I think you'll get some sharp buyback here on Oklahoma State if it keeps moving up. I think this one started at -1.5 and is up to 3.5. My lean here would be Oklahoma State. I don't think I'll play this one because, I don't know if I trust Oklahoma State on the defensive end in the secondary. Oklahoma State, good at stopping the run, secondary a weakness. Texas, to me, their offense is really not that good. They're not even in the top 70 in yards per play. So Texas still has stuff to prove to me. I'm not sure I think Oklahoma State's good enough for me to actually put my money on them, but my slight lean here would be the home underdog.
All right, guys, we got 2 games left here, and remember the coupon code if checking out with Kyle Hunter on sportsmemo.com. We got CFB30 for 30% off any all-access or any college football service with Kyle at sportsmemo.com. We got 181-182 Rice at North Texas. Looks like 56 the total, with North Texas laying 30.5 in Denton. Big number here, but Rice isn't any good. So how you look to bet this one, Kyle?
Well, I don't like laying 30.5 no matter who it is, honestly. I can't lay the points. Having said that, I'm not taking Rice here either. Rice is 129th in the nation in yards per play margin. Texas is 33rd. North Texas is 33rd. North Texas with 49 plays of 20 yards or more on offense, so a very explosive offense. I've said it many times before. I think Mason Fine's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the country. I think Mason Fine will have a big game here. Rice ranks in the bottom 10 at allowing explosive offense, plays of 20 yards or more. North Texas is going to score a lot of points in this game. I think I would take the over if I took anything in this game. I think North Texas will get their points, and I think that Rice, when they're down big, will likely be able to score some in this one. So with the total at a reasonable 55.5, 56, my lean here would be the over in this game.
Good one here in the AAC to end it, Kyle. We got 183-184 USF at Houston. USF having a heck of a season. However, who have they really beat? I guess they beat Georgia Tech, but I don't know if Georgia Tech was really rolling in that one. Versus Houston, this is a pretty good Houston team, man. If you've been watching them, they got talent all over the field, and the best D line South Florida's faced. However, laying 7.5. So a key hook there on the touchdown, 75 the total versus a undefeated South Florida team. So this is an interesting handicap here. How do you look to bet this one, Kyle?
Yeah, first of all, I remember that South Florida and Georgia Tech game. I had Georgia Tech in that game, and I felt like that was a bit of a bad beat. Georgia Tech controlled that game, definitely had the big edge in yardage. Georgia Tech with a couple key turnovers and spots. And also South Florida had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. And if you have 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns in the same game, you're usually going to win the game. I think that South Florida is a team I'm looking to fade. I wish I could get 7 instead of 7.5, but I would certainly take Houston on the side here if I was going to take a side. I think South Florida is overvalued. They're a team that, like you said, who have they beaten? They beat Georgia Tech, But if you look at the stats, they shouldn't have beaten Georgia Tech. And then, they struggled to beat Tulsa on the road. They were very fortunate to win that game. I think Houston's offense is really, really going very well right now. The fastest paced offense in the country. I think Houston will put up a lot of points on this South Florida secondary. South Florida not very good against the run either. So to me, Houston is going to put up a big number here. Can South Florida keep up? I wouldn't trust them to do that. I think that with Houston's defensive line, like you said, easily the best defensive line they've played against, I think South Florida will be having some trouble with Houston getting into the backfield here.
Great stuff, Kyle. Anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
No, I'm just excited for another weekend of college football. I'm also 3-0, went 3-0 last weekend in the NFL, so check out my NFL stuff as well at sportsmemo.com.
Yeah, and remember CFB30 when checking out for any all-access. Be able to get his NFL or any college football service at sportsmemo.com. We'll be right back with Robbie Vino to finish off the card.